Hello, this is my book review of Timing the Real Estate Market, The Campbell Method, which is by Robert Campbell, reviewed by Parker Schultz. So, Timing the Real Estate Market, 5th edition. This book talks about the Campbell Method, which is a, quote, proven system for buying and selling real estate for maximum profits. So what this book kind of gets at, it's really the principle of timing, not location, which is kind of a big contrast to what people usually tell you about real estate. And there is a good point brought up in the book where even if you buy the right property at the best location, but it's at the wrong time, that location isn't going to help you pay the bank. And this book, it's based off the San Diego market, yet it's fundamentally applicable everywhere. And given my case study of this book and my experience with the San Diego market, that's what works best for me, and that's what my model will ultimately be made off of, but it might be different for you. So there's the 5 vital indicators that kind of compose the Campbell algorithm, if you will. And they are existing home sales, new home building permits, mortgage loan defaults, foreclosure sales, and interest rates. And these are all connected to each other in some way, shape, or form, as I'll explain later on. So for existing home sales, buyers create the demand for housing that is directly linked with price movement. Real estate prices don't go down because property owners decide to sell. Prices go down because people stop buying. And I think this is the most obvious indicator off the top of your head. Anyone would have said this, but something I did learn about this is the seller versus buyer dichotomy and sort of how that plays into it. So transitioning from home sales, we go on new home building permits. And just right off the bat, a difference between new home building permits and new home purchases is a timeline. If I have a permit to build a house, you got to consider how long is it going to take me to go from getting that permit to actually turning that permit into a buildable house and then also selling that house. So that difference in timing helps you get kind of 2 different perspectives. Robert mentions that the real estate construction is the largest single industry in the U.S., supposed to be 15 to 20% of the total economy. And also that's a bigger picture number because it also gets into the ability to build new houses when you look at just the economy. And then home builders are keenly aware of the demand for housing. When you're looking at professionals that are doing what they do, not to obviously acknowledge that some home builders have not properly read the market in the past. That's sort of a better indicator. Once a professional company is taking this risk, they probably have more of an understanding of the market compared to your average home buyer. Mortgage loan defaults. So mortgage loan defaults occur when the homeowner doesn't make a mortgage payment for a certain period of time. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to default, but it is a good indicator. And also to note, just because you have a mortgage loan default does not mean the house will necessarily be foreclosed upon, but it's still a good indicator nonetheless. And it really gets down to the economy. If people have the funds, mortgage loan default can start because, a major job supplier could leave, and now people are having difficulty making ends meet, which could then be the precursor to a decrease in the demand for real estate. But, at the end of the day, foreclosures will lead to price reductions, but the mortgage loan default is kind of the tip of the iceberg, and they're not necessarily correlated. But when mortgage loans default, the likelihood of a foreclosure increases dramatically. So now the foreclosure sale. So the thing about a foreclosure sale, when you look at it on a deeper level, it's that to protect their home equity from being lost, the owners of properties in foreclosure would normally be able to sell before the bank was forced to auction off the property. So when you take that back to the previous indicator, which is the mortgage default notice, someone might get that notice, but if they're not able to sell for the price that they need and then a foreclosure is mandated, that will be, a big red flag to show that if the market was hot and that one person might have just had financial issues, they should have been able to sell and cover themselves. But if they weren't, then, clearly the market's not willing to support the price that they need. And, I would go ding, 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 red flag on that one for sure. And then last but not least, we have interest rates. And an important thing to note is that the previous 4 vital signs are all based off the specific selected metropolitan area, while interest rates can be either national or even global factors that affect real estate demand and pricing. So interest rate trends should be viewed as an accelerator or brake to what the other vital signs are telling you about the general market trend. I think this now more than ever has never been more applicable with interest rates just being cut, even though some people think we're at the top of a market, and then now we have this kind of area for growth. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out when we put all these numbers together in our own model and try to compare what we get to what Robert gets. So what is the magic formula? So knowing all these vital signs is one thing and applying them is another. You're going to need to take your own spin on this to kind of see what weights you could put on it to build an algorithm. I mean, it's not just one-to-one, apples to apples. In the book, Robert uses historical data and his sort of magic formula, and I would say more or less, with a big asterisk there, he generally predicts market directions. So I'm going to build my own model and see if I can't get it to work. I will note that he has more of a residential expertise, while mine would be on the commercial side. Robert also has a newsletter, and you can also buy his software from him too. Nothing is perfect at the end of the day. This is, really just a general indicator, and it's not gold. And the biggest truth is the market will fluctuate. And, in summary, this book kind of really taught me about the balance of the market. What does it mean when there's too many sellers, and what does it mean when there's too many buyers? At what stage of the market fluctuation does that happen, and what are kind of the warning signs leading up to that, and then what are the results leading up after? So I had some few takeaways that I just want to share with you from this book, and it's never buy anything unless you know under what conditions you will sell it. A lot of people don't know this, but your money in real estate is made on the purchase, it's not on the sale. So meaning if you buy something now that's undervalued, or your vital sign indicators can show that the market can support an increase in value, then that's a much better purchase than buying something that's expensive and assuming it's going to go up blindly. Until you let go of the false idea that you or anyone else knows more than the market does, you will be building up your ego instead of your bank account. This kind of touches back on what I said earlier, where the market is ultimately its own beast, and you're never going to seek perfection, only strive to be as perfect as possible, and you have to take it with a grain of salt that these factors aren't in your control, but it's your best you can do is just read what's on the wall. For example, the markets have no memory, only people do. So that also speaks to the truth of when you do have these vital indicators, you need to know when to stick to your guns, as they say, because when people are being greedy, you should be fearful, but when people are being fearful, you should be greedy. And lastly, predicting rain doesn't count, building arcs does. And I like this because a lot of people invest in real estate only for the upside, and then it's when the downside comes and they're not prepared or they're over levered, that's when they get crushed. But that's when the smartest investors can get the best deals. If you liked my review of this book and you'd be interested in reading it for yourself or maybe discussing with me further, you can buy it from Robert's website, www.realestatetiming.com. I have the 5th edition, which is supposed to have the most recent data, but you should be able to get it off his website. I'm sure you'll get the most up-to-date one, including if you want to subscribe to his newsletter or if you want to buy his formula for Excel, I believe it is. You can also do that on his website. Thank you. Again, my name is Parker Schultz. I'm from the Sire Group of Pacific Coast Commercial. If you have any questions, you can email me or visit our website. Thanks.